Welcome again to the P.E.A.R podcast, where our goal is to share the stories of women who have pivoted, explored opportunities, adapted to circumstances, repositioned themselves for success, no matter what life or business has put in their path. And today I am extremely thankful to have Leticia Lamar with me here today. She is the founder and CEO of Ventura Educational Consulting and Design, LLC. This is a firm that specializes in educational consulting, career development, and transformational leadership coaching. She has over 31 years experience as a master educator, and as a transformational coach, she empowers leaders through her personal development framework. So welcome, Leticia. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank
And
you so much, Dr. Stillman. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. And I think part of when I got to visit with you, we met in Charlotte, North Carolina at a conference. And I think that your story about how your mother's legacy not only gave you a really good foundation for life, but it has kind of moved you in a certain direction throughout your life. So I would love to maybe start your story there, and share some of how your mother influenced you as a young woman.
Yes, well, while others were, going to the skating rings and doing, other teenage things, I was working. And at 16, my mother, showed me what the finances were, what the monthly expenses were. And so she felt that it was important for me to start contributing. And she started me out, with a phone bill payment and then a light bill payment. And I could do that because I was working at Winn-Dixie. And, I felt like I was contributing and it was great. And prior to that, she had taught me how to, go down and make a payment, using a money order
Mm.
and to pay the J.C. Penney's credit card and what have you. So to be able to take my own funds and present this, it was like maturity. But then around 17, going into 18, she had me make a mortgage payment, and that was more than I had, with a light bill and a phone bill back in the 80s. It was a mortgage payment. And so I was like, well, this is serious. And I see, really what we're putting out. And so it all worked. I believe she knew that her health was failing, more than she admitted to.
At the time,
And
yeah.
yes. And so she had some major chronic issues that had escalated. And she talked often about, helping me in college and paying for her funeral. And I was like, well, why are you talking about that? Because, at that age, I was not thinking of losing my mother. But that was her mindset. And so she had gone back to a vocational school, which we now call colleges, state colleges, but it was a technical school to earn a certification that would afford her a state job that would in turn give her the benefits that she was concerned with. She did not have life insurance. She did not have health insurance. And so, had she made permanent status, and at that time it was 6 months,
Yeah.
she would have had those supports in place. But she did not, and I did not find out about that with the 6 months. I knew that she had finished her program and she began working, but with me in my senior year in high school and working at Winn-Dixie, I would leave in the morning at 6:15 on the bus, and then go straight to work and then get home 8:30, 9 o'clock. I didn't know that she did not make permanent status. And so it wasn't until I was in my second month in college, a freshman year, that I received a phone call that she did not earn permanent status. She was in a depressed state. The house was not immaculate as it had been. And so I just had to take over because she was denied multiple times for SSI disability, even though her body and her condition indicated that she needed support. But definitely in the late 80s, early 90s, and some individuals even now are experiencing difficulty receiving the benefits that they have paid into. But,
Right.
you know,
Right.
so
And you were learning an awful lot of life skills at a very young age when most people are out, having fun and partying. You were like, this is what real life is all about.
that's right. And definitely, now this is my freshman year in college. I transferred my work assignment during the months or the weeks that I was in Daytona, Bethune-Cookman, which they had, two Winn-Dixies that were one within walking distance, one, within a bus ride. And so I transferred my employment there. And so I worked Winn-Dixie, and then I took over, the mortgage payment, the majors, which was the light bill, the phone bill, had trash included and what have you with the utilities. And, I took over because I knew the situation. And we were just 2 years out from paying off a mortgage.
Oh, wow.
So, I could not allow my mother's home to go into foreclosure.
Yeah.
And we only had 2 years left. So I worked Winn-Dixie. There were some individuals in the city who knew my situation, and they supported me by allowing me to clean for them, professionally clean for them. And that was something that my mother had mentioned even before I left for college. And I was like, well, Mom, I don't need to know how to clean house professionally, even though she was a domestic, back
Yeah.
in the early 60s, she worked for very wealthy families here in Orlando. And so she was like, well, you don't know what you may have to do. You better let me show you, and how you can contract. And so that did work for my benefit and for her benefit as well, because learning how to contract at that time was just wonderful. And, you know, earning $100 for 2 or 3 hours of work 37 years ago,
Yep.
that was golden.
Yep.
So I took, the earnings of Winn-Dixie, and then also my cleaning. And sometimes those cleaning opportunities also included childcare, so there were times where I cared for the dignitaries' children and cleaned their house at the same time, so it was
Wear a
wonderful.
lot of hats when you're doing those kinds of jobs. Yeah.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
amount of trust that
Yeah.
these individuals, to allow me to come into their space, to trust me with their children and to
Yeah.
clean their homes. And then there were older individuals that, they had me polishing their silver. So, if it wasn't clean in the house, you can polish silver for hours. And that's what I did. And it was wonderful, wonderful, earnest money. And then, as time went on, there was a small improvement in her health, but then there was, some backtracking there where she was experiencing what was considered like mini strokes.
Mm.
And I kept her at home as long as I could. It came to one hospital stay where the social worker became involved and said she cannot ethically, stay at home. Friends of the family cannot really care for her. She needs 24-hour um, assistance in a facility. And I was devastated because I was called out of one of my college courses, and I had to come because the hospital said, we are discharging her. There's nothing else we can do for her. But then I had nowhere to take her.
Mm.
And so that's where the social worker said, well, HRS is across the street. and you can go over there and see what they can do. But she was not cleared for Medicaid disability to be in a facility. And so here I am, in tears all the way 45 minutes trying to figure this out. And when I got there, it was just divine because this woman, social worker, along with the HRS counselor, they shut down at 5 o'clock. And your house can be burning down, but they're
It's
closing their doors at five
at five
o'clock.
o'clock. Yeah.
And so it was 15 minutes to 5. And this woman was talking to me through a cracked door. And I was like, please, I need your help. And she said, well, I did receive a call. And so come in. And she stayed until 7 and got
Oh
my
wow.
mother cleared for, the facility that I could take her to Daytona with me. That was divine because sometimes these processes take days or weeks, but over, in less than 3 hours. She
Yeah.
had called the facility, called the hospital. They kept her overnight. I drove her by the house for the last time she knew it. It was a very emotional time, but she was able to continue with me in Daytona, just 2 miles from my apartment. I had 24-hour visitation, and I was able to continue my education without any breaks.
So you learn to advocate for somebody else at a very young age as well. So, not only are you taking care of yourself and you're working 2 jobs and you're going to school, but you're also having to advocate for your parent who, you kind of pivoted now from being someone who was being parented to now you're kind of parenting your parent and helping her through a very hard time in her life.
And it even escalated, because once I brought her in January, then now we're looking at, okay, still have the mortgage payment.
Yep.
And so I had to rent out the house, still make the mortgage payment, and there was opportunity to add on 2 more sources of income in order to pay that mortgage off.
Wow.
Because it's a different situation if that mortgage is not paid off prior to
Yep.
death. Then you're having to do
Yep.
something else on the back end.
Yep.
And so I was so fortunate that I had a professor who referred me to her lawyer. And yes, there was a will prior to that, but she said, you need to look into probate so that this moves smoothly and there are no hiccups. You
Yeah.
want this to transfer. And so once I brought her to Daytona with me, an opportunity opened up. There was the city manager that came through my line at Winn-Dixie, and he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm a student at Bethune-Cookman. I'm majoring in business education. He gave me his card and he said, if you would like to join us, just, contact this person right here. And so I had 2 interviews. And so I added on working for the assistant state attorney, which was down the street from the university, so that was within walking distance. But of course, I had a car by then. And so I worked there, and GE, their last corporate for Florida, was across from Daytona 500. So I cleaned offices there additionally. And so when it came down to the last 2 weeks of my mother's life, where she was in the hospital at that time, the last communication where there was a response, I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going. This was my junior year. I said, I'm going to Orlando. I have to take my state certification for teaching, and I'll talk with you when I get back. But I paid the house off. And her only expression was just tears. And so I felt at that moment that she was content. She knew that her legacy, what she had instilled in me, which was home ownership above, all else, because she was raised by, and she was raised in a sharecropping family. So they
Yep.
never owned property.
Yep.
And, some of the locations that they had moved out of, they moved back into. And it was very, very traumatic for her. And so her goal was to have a stable home. And I never lived anywhere other than the home that she acquired when I was 6 months old. And so her legacy of, having a home, a property with her name on it was important. And that transferred to me. And so that's why I could not
Yeah.
allow her home to go into foreclosure, and I was
Yeah.
able to pay it off before she passed. And
Yeah.
so,
That's an amazing piece because I think you learned several things in there. You learned how to get multiple revenue streams. You learned the value of home ownership. You learned how to advocate, and you were still going to school for something else.
yes, yes, yes. And it was heavy now. I would not wish that
No.
on my worst enemy, because
Yes.
there were some things that I had to, adjust and make some adjustments physically because it was
Yeah.
heavy. It was heavy
Yeah.
emotionally and physically. But what I learned has carried me and the students and the families that have been impacted since then. Because when I graduated, I came into the classroom with a different mindset.
Right.
We're not here to, just have an elective and play around. We're here to gain skills because you never know
No.
where your supports may end,
Right.
as a young person. And you have to be in a position to take care of yourself independently, earn your own way, and also look at, what do you want to acquire? So my mindset was totally different. My students experienced a teacher that was
I
totally
bet.
different.
I bet.
I taught business courses, and you're not coming in here playing. You're coming
Yeah.
in here to produce and to have a portfolio
Yeah.
that you can share with employers.
Yeah.
That's your focus. And
Yeah.
so that also evolved into working with families, working with grandparents raising grandchildren,
Hmm.
which that's a different calling, when you are a relative caregiver, because parents are off doing other things, or they may be you know in the system, or deceased, or what have you. And so there are challenges with that, and making sure that these young people have a future and they have vision and they're able to see past tomorrow. And so I worked with agencies. I also did private work. I was also a youth counselor in the church, and it just made the difference. And so, I have two core groups of about 12, and now they're in their 40s with their children. So, yes, yes.
So
And
you were in the, and like we introduced in the beginning, you were in the education system for over 31 years. So when did you make the change now into your own private business?
well, it actually, the foundation of that started in 2019 when I established Ventura Educational Consulting and Design, because I knew that all that I had acquired and the success, it needed to continue, but in a prescribed way. There were too many young people who do walk across the stage as graduates, but they're not really ready for
Mm.
independent living. And even those who go off to college, if certain aspects of their life is not in order, they don't even finish their first year.
Yep, true.
And so it was so important for me to, be able to work with school systems, community-based organizations inclusive of churches, and private families in making sure that their recent graduate or upcoming graduate is ready for that transition. That is so much my passion, is making sure that young adults are ready for that transition for successful independent life. Because if they're living with multiple people, they are vulnerable,
Yeah.
very vulnerable. And then the division of Ventura Educational Consulting and Design is Ventura Leadership Solutions. Because I saw, in my coaching and being coached by a business coach, that there was a great need even for adults who have not achieved what they feel they should have achieved, or they're not working in their divine giftings and talents. They have a 9 to 5, but it's not necessarily where they would be most productive.
Yeah, that's
And
it's where their passion is, like what you were saying. Yeah.
yes, and so that's where, the focus is making sure with the agencies and families that youth are ready, but then also those individuals who have lived life, may have children and or grandchildren, and they still need support.
Yeah.
And this is for leaders in the workplace, the marketplace, faith circles, and definitely just leading in the home, because the more developed an individual is personally, the greater they can lead others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in putting together your business and making that transition from being in the workplace to being, your own business owner, what was your biggest challenge that you faced during that time?
Well, my biggest challenge was just making sure that I finished what I started,
Mm.
because I was successful. I had state recognition for moving the bottom 25% of students who were not reading on grade level, most of them 3 and 4 levels below.
Wow.
And so I had success in moving them. I also had success with industry certifications. But then when I thought personally, I began my master's program. At that time, it was 2015. And I'm looking back, I started 16 years prior, and I had not finished my master's. And here I am paying on a loan, and I had not finished. And I had not finished because of an emotional setback. And so sometimes, grief and regret, and you get into that rat race of, I can't do this because of that and this. It just worked out divinely. One of my former students said, I have my master's with XYZ University, and you should go back and get yours. And she,
That motivated you.
yes, I was like, because here I am thinking, well, I can't start over again. These credits will not transfer, and I'm having to start from the bottom. I'm having to invest and take out this loan, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
And so I had to overcome, I had to trust myself again. I had to trust the process, and I had to make an investment.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to take a quote out of your book. Leticia has written a book called Be Great, a Personal Development Legacy Summit. And one of the quotes in there is, you are not defined by what broke you, but what you've chosen to build afterward. And I think you're just living that. I mean, it's words on paper, but it's definitely something that you show as, I'm not just telling you this, I've lived this. I've experienced this.
Yes, and that was a motivator as well in finishing that master's program, because again, here I am, I'm working full time. I'm also doing some supplemental work, and now I'm having to, meet in person at a prescribed, location for this program and, invest these hours. And I still had other interests. I still had
Mhm.
other responsibilities. And so to be able to balance that and
Mhm.
also, deal with that self-talk, you can do this, and it's not a waste of money and, and what have you. And so it was so instrumental in my development and in my transitioning to finish my master's program in educational leadership. So, I am credentialed as a school leader, as a principal, and that affords a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
understand and have success academically, but also have the training for management to ensure that institutions are legally sound and they're operating, and the funding and all that needs to come together to make that institution credible and effective for the students. So that's important too. And I'm just so glad that I did finish. And it all worked out
Yeah.
because the first loan and the second loan were forgiven
And I
because
think,
I was in the education system,
right,
because
right.
I was a public servant.
Yeah.
What I was so concerned with was taking care of, but I had to trust the process and trust myself.
And I think that's one of the benefits in some industry sectors is that if you go to school and you do get school loans, but then you go to work, there is some form of loan forgiveness in there, and it's very valuable for a lot of students because, there are jobs where you don't have to have a college degree today, but
Right.
there are still a lot of jobs that require it, and it's an important piece. I kind of want to go back to as you were going through all of this, and I know you and I have talked about this, how journaling is an important part of your life. Because another piece that I got out of your book was that your journal is not just paper, it's a sacred space where you pour out your heart. And you were saying that you had journaled through lots of things from an early age.
Yes. Yes. From age 12, I started journaling how I felt, what I wanted to say and could not say,
Mm,
what I thought I should do. And then, as I became, more mature and deeper in my faith, I started listening for what I should do, versus what I wanted to do
mm,
and how I should respond and what is the best case scenario. And so really it helped to define emotional intelligence and resilience, and not being impulsive but being responsive.
right.
And so journaling is so important. It's so important because, in the moment we may see things in one aspect, but after stepping back and journaling in a reflective manner, to be successful and to be accountable with your next steps, that's important. We're not just journaling fluffy things. This is about what will I do next to move forward, because sometimes you have to pivot. Sometimes relationships end. Sometimes, you have to apologize. You have to become the better person. And journaling helps you to document this. And I think it's really needed because we live in a society now where people feel they can just get on social media, say what they want to say, get a response, or a reaction. But is that really what they need in order to be successful?
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say that journaling would be one of the things that you would recommend to a woman who is feeling stuck or she needs to shift but doesn't know how? Or would you have any other
Yes.
suggestions or recommendations?
Yes, I feel that a woman who feels stuck, and this, and I was able to take all of this and put it into a signature workshop. And that workshop is to envision, to explore, to enroll, which means invest, enroll physically with your time and your resources, if that's the case, and execute your dreams.
Mm.
Because if you keep rehearsing what you haven't done or what should have been or could have been or would have been, and you don't put action to it, um, you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
And if you just write about it and still never invest, invest in the program, invest in a mentor, and definitely you need a niche coach for whatever your endeavor is.
Yep.
And so you need to invest in a coach that will be able to assist you, specifically. Mentors, they can share life experiences and what have you, but a coach, and we can take it from the perspective of athletes.
Yes.
There's a difference in a head coach and a performance coach,
Yep.
because that performance coach is about what you need to do to reach the next level, and it takes investments to have a performance coach.
It
So
does.
I would tell that woman who is stuck to definitely envision. She has to document where she wants to be, and I would use a thinking map. That's been my secret sauce to processing and helping thousands of students to take concepts and understand them, and then use that understanding in multiple ways. And so that needs to be documented on a thinking map. And then there needs to be exploration, which we have the internet at our fingertips. Anything
Yep.
that you want to know, any program within the world, you can research that and have virtual visits and field
Yep.
trips.
Yep.
And then, as I mentioned, you have to enroll, invest, and then you have to execute your dreams.
Got to
And
do
that
it.
takes courage. That
Yep.
takes courage and it takes fortitude, but you can be unstuck.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a friend that when we're out looking to see where we're going next, she calls it fact-finding mission. You've got to go find out what's available, what's the potential, but eventually you've got to do. There's got to be action involved in order to go that. Well, I think we've had a lovely conversation here, but what's on the horizon for you? Where do you see your next steps?
Well, with the launch of Be Great, a personal development legacy summit, along with the signature coaching program, which is Legacy Now, how to live and realign your life for clarity. There's opportunity for individuals to receive, really, consulting and coaching in a book.
In a book.
And, for further support, there are VIPs, there are workshops for leaders that are in corporate, leaders who are heads of faith, community based organizations, services for the community. These individuals can, bring us in to help train
Yep.
their leaders to be more effective because of personal development.
Yep.
And so that is in place as of now, in addition to Legacy Now with Leticia Lamar, which is the podcast. And you can find us on YouTube. And then there's a memoir coming out that chronicles everything from college through current, working with divine situations and what I learned and what others can employ to finish strong and to not be derailed by opposition.
Yeah. And sometimes I think the opposition comes from our own self.
Yes,
And
yes,
we have those negative thoughts, so we get that self-doubt, and so
mhm,
sometimes even overcoming opposition is we just have to get out of our own way.
yes. And those journals will be so reflective, and just to give a little tidbit there, to understand what were you sent to accomplish. See, when you know what you were sent to accomplish, and did you accomplish it or not, and why? Why
Yeah.
did you not? And what is your next step in accomplishing, and what will you take into the next situation?
Yeah.
What have you learned? How have you been impacted emotionally, physically, financially, socially? So it's very, very intuitive and reflective when you have these divine opportunities. Do you finish strong? And how do you navigate? Because, it's just like, um, the Grand Canyon. You have to make adjustments sometimes based on the environment
Yeah.
and what is allowed or not allowed, but you can still finish strong. And so
You
that's what
can.
that memoir is about.
That's amazing. Well, we could honestly be here all day because you are just an absolute wealth of knowledge. But I really appreciate you being on. And we're going to have all the ways to connect with Leticia in our show notes. So if you would love to connect and learn more because she has much more to share, please check there. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stillman.